The books, podcasts, conferences, meetups only will take you so far. So I think internally, we know that nobody around us was actually doing the things that I want to do next. So, and as an auditor mindset, I just do not want to go in blindly into something. So I need to get into a network. That's when I reach out to 4 or 5 mentorship groups.
This is your daily real estate syndication show. I'm your host, Whitney Sewell. Today, our guest is going to show you and tell you how she went to build a portfolio of 2,600 units in a very short period of time. That doesn't happen for just everyone, but there are some key things that I see are common in people who are moving fast in this industry, right? Her name is Maggie Cheung, and she's a co-founder and managing partner of Sage Investing Group. She comes from an audit and risk management background, which I think could be very helpful in this space, but has been investing in real estate since 2011. And with a collective real estate portfolio of over 2,600 units, Sage Investing Group focuses on sourcing, underwriting, vetting private real estate investments for its portfolio as well as its investors. So Maggie goes through numerous things for us to say of how she got into this business, right? And even leaving her job before knowing that, this was like the path that she was going to take. And even talks about a little bit, getting her spouse on board with this big decision of diving into the real estate business and specifically syndication. And so you're going to hear some of that, and just she's transparent about it. And I'm grateful because I think that helps so many other people. Man, she also goes through a big part of her business is working with brokers. And, she even has been hung up on numerous times, and she's going to share some about that I know you're going to learn from. But then also, she's going to share some challenges that they're having in the business right now and what they're doing about them. I know you're going to learn a lot from Maggie today. Maggie, welcome to the show. Honored to see you again. I appreciate you reminding me that you and I were at the same conference like 3 years ago. And so it's neat to now have you on the show. Tell the listeners a little more about who you are, what's your focus right now in real estate, and let's dive into how you got into the syndication business as well.
Yeah, thank you for having me on, Whitney. So, like you mentioned, we met 3 years ago. That's a long time. At that time, I was just getting started. And maybe a year back before that we met, I actually quit my job in Wall Street. I was an auditor, a career auditor for a long time. So there's something happened in my life, and I just realized that I need to get out of my corporate job. And that was personal, it was just family. I just wanted more time for my family. And I quit my job, not knowing where I want to go, but I knew that I needed to scale my real estate business. So me and my husband kind of sat down, and really wanted to focus and figure this real estate a career, next path of my life. So we compromised and, okay, just give me a year. I asked him to give me a year to figure this out. And that's when that's part of that year journey, I met you at the conference. And I had at that time, I only had single family, like most people, and I wanted to figure out how to scale that much more. So I took a year to figure out, okay, what is it in real estate that I can be, and what kind of skill set that I have to translate to this next career in my life, or next chapter. So as part of the journey, you were in there 3 years ago. And at that time, we only have limited partner in syndication. I was just getting started, but syndication wasn't too foreign to me because in my career as an auditor in Wall Street, I seen bankers put these deals together in a larger capacity. So they buy shopping malls, and they also look for investors. They put in the capital themselves, and there's also SEC filings. There's due diligence process. A lot of the terminology was very familiar to me. So I felt very comfortable in this syndication if it wasn't too far a stretch. But I did have to figure out how to get more involved. And that's where I went to conferences like the one that we met 3 years ago. And that was the beginning of my journey for me.
Awesome. Well, it's interesting, that term syndication scares a lot of people off, right? They've never heard about this type of investing. They're just like, oh, that's so out of my comfort zone. I hear it all the time. It's like, my parents never told me about that, so it must not be okay, right? So it's interesting how I love hearing how different people hear about this business and dive in. Well, you mentioned, I wanted to ask you about one thing there too. You said, you convinced your husband to give you a year. Was it hard to convince it? Was he, because I'm sure there's people listening that can relate to that, right? Maybe their spouse is not on board with this drive that they have to think, hey, I can go do this in the real estate business. How did you do that? What did that look like? Was he on board? Was he not? Share what you're willing to share.
Absolutely. The funny thing is that I'm an auditor, and I also marry a fellow auditor. So you have to imagine how much more effort that has to be, because to convince another person who's an auditor who has a risk averse is much more harder. But because I know myself, I think I know the process, the logic behind how he's getting to this conclusion. So that 1 year stretch, because I tried an audit, there's a term called scoping and planning. So I kind of approach everything in my life kind of the same way. So I scope out the real estate business, the different types of real estate business. So it could be wholesaling, it could be flipping, it could be multifamily, smaller multifamily to larger multifamily. So I set out that 1 year to figure out these different types of strategies. I tried it myself as different things that didn't work out. I kind of explained the process to my husband. It's not going to happen. It's not going to work for us. This business is not going to scale for us. And it's definitely not something I enjoy. So I think throughout that process, I kind of like catalog and also explain to him what it will mean and how it will impact our family, because this is time commitment, there's resource commitment, and then there's, resource meaning it could be money, time, and skill, right? So I think it's because I took at that time to scope out the different avenues. I also walked him through the process. It was much more easier to get on board. Of course, from that to syndication, it's another level of trust because you're trusting somebody else to run the deal. So that telling my husband, okay, can we fork over some money to invest in somebody else's deal? That requires a lot of trust. But I think luckily, because I am familiar with some of the regulation that's around it, and it's not totally blinded, or it does fall into SEC and SEC realm, right? So could we possibly be losing money? That's possible. But of course, everything it's a risk. So it's measuring the risk and measuring the rewards. And I think at the beginning, we were just testing out the water. So we didn't invest too much. So it wasn't too much of a loss.
You had to be willing to take a little risk, right? You and your husband.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And so it sounds like, you all thought, or you determined that the risk was worth taking with the potential reward, the reward that was their potential there, right? To have such a reward that made it worth taking the risk that you took. It sounds like anyway. Tell me, what was some of the next steps? So did you find mentorships? Did you read books? Did you just listen to podcasts? What gave you the confidence now to move into the, buying large multifamily, real estate?
Yeah. So in the beginning, we did like 4 or 5 limited partnerships where went in syndication. So we were trying to test out different types of operators and different types of deal structures. And we wanted to scale a little bit more and more into general partnership. The books, podcasts, conferences, meetups only will take you so far. So I think internally, we know that nobody around us was actually doing the things that I want to do next. So, and as an auditor mindset, I just do not want to go in blindly into something. So I need to get into a network. That's when I reach out to 4 or 5 mentorship groups in the LUA and kind of figure out, okay, there was something that we wanted to be part of. And culture is very important to us. So we wanted to be in part of a group that is promoting being able to actually having the success rate that people are doing deals and doing deals together. So it doesn't feel as daunting. I think I like it more when I think because I'm in the corporate world, there's a lot more eyes into a project and there's a lot more people giving you opinions. And I think more opinions, especially experienced opinions, those are things that are very, very valued very much because you don't never want to go into a deal blindly, especially when you're working at millions of dollars.
Yeah. Yeah, no doubt about it. Well, so give us like 1 or 2 of the key things that happened for you though after that to help you to scale so fast.
I joined Multifamily membership with Mark Kenny. I really like his group because he has like a family culture in his ecosystem. And a lot of people are willing to help out and also it was more like a smaller knit community. And that's what we're looking for. We're looking for people who are willing to do deals or who are serious in front. I don't want to be in a group that's too big. It's just, you kind of get lost in the process. So that's kind of where we want. We actually looked at 4 or 5 groups before we settled on one.
Yeah.
I think that was most important.
That's awesome. I know Mark very well, actually. Yeah. And couldn't speak highly enough of him and Camille and just that group. I know a lot of people in that group and many have moved very fast. So it's amazing when you get all these people together things start to happen, right? And like you said, the culture, and the commitment to just education and all that, all in the same place. So that's incredible. Well, now what's your focus, Maggie? Like you every day in the business, what are you doing now? As you're pushing forward for Sage Investing Group.
Yeah. So my job, I work with two other ladies who are two of my partners. So my job is really to look for deals. So I talk to brokers on a daily basis. I evaluate deals. I talk to property manager to kind of see that we can make something happen, and also put a team together to make sure we can really take down a deal ourselves. A lot of talking.
Yeah, it's good. It requires it, right? Tell me maybe a few of the top tips you'd tell somebody that's learning to talk to a broker. Maybe, a couple questions. Hey, you got to ask the broker this, or maybe you need to ensure the broker knows this about you.
Yeah.
Or what would that be?
In the beginning, it's a little bit more intimidating because you had no track record. But I think it's because you do have to kind of like mention, like I leverage on my partners like Mark and the group's capacity. So we are able to deliver, hey, we never lost out a deal or never closed a deal. Or those things are really helpful for the broker because you're really trying to sell him that you can close a deal. At the end of the day, that's what they're looking for. So you got to figure out what's their motivation. It's basically they're evaluating you how likelihood that you can close on a deal. So you got to deliver those punchlines to make sure that they can hear you well, that you can do that. So I'm going to tell you off the back that I messed up a few times in the beginning.
Surely not.
And I definitely have people hang up on me because I did not know or realize quickly how to work on that mental exercise to make sure that I can deliver that punch every single time. So it does take a while to kind of practice. And in the beginning, I think you just have to figure out that it's not about you, it's about your performance. So you got to just keep on practicing.
One of the ways that we scaled quickly was attending many conferences early on and networking and learning as fast as possible. There's a conference coming up that you need to know about. It's called the Think Multifamily Annual Fire Summit Conference, and it's November 11th and 12th. You can save $100 on this conference by using promo code Whitney100. And if you're tired of paying too much in taxes or want to recession-proof your investment portfolio, you need to consider Think Multifamily's Annual Fire Summit, November 11th and 12th. The Think Multifamily team has over 25 years of experience, done over 100 apartment syndications, 16,000 units purchased in 13 states, and over $1 billion in assets under management. They have the experience that you can trust to help you grow your personal portfolio and avoid those pitfalls that often investors and syndicators fall into. They know you don't have to sacrifice integrity and transparency and servant leadership or your family values, and you're going to feel those things at this event when you attend. Don't forget, thinkmultifamily.com/fire and use promo code Whitney100 to save $100. Yeah, I love that you were willing to be uncomfortable there, right? And we even had people hang up on you, like you talked about. It's comical in a sense, but in another way, that's not easy in the moment, right? Frustrating, and it's just a learning curve that you got to be willing to go through, I think, right? You got to be willing to hear no many times, right, before you get to a yes. And that's just part of that learning process for sure. So working with brokers, and yes, learning how to talk to them, being willing to do that. What about, are you involved in underwriting as well?
Yes, I am.
Awesome. Maybe you could even relate this to, obviously how you all are underwriting deals right now, but what are some specific things that you're looking at when you're underwriting a deal right now that may be different from a year ago?
Yeah, I don't know if we do anything differently now, but I think it's more scrutiny. We worry about, at this moment, we worry about inflation. I think everybody is in top of their mind, as well as interest rate. I worry about, because we do work on tertiary markets most of the time, want to make sure that our rents are supported, even there's inflation. I worry about if can the tenant really absorb that, kind of what I'm concerned about. So we try to look for areas where there is more, when you look at the income growth, is there really sustainability in income growth? That's what we focus on. There's our jobs coming in, because most of the tenant space, the requirement is they make 3-to-1 ratio. So we want to make sure that 3-to-1 ratio versus our renovation pro forma, there's still a good gap there. So that we focus on that a lot. And operational wise right now, I think that's very, very important, because as we go on, I think cash management is very important. So that's what we focus on right now.
Okay. Yeah. Cash management, man, so important. When you're back up, like you said, hey, you're asking, can a tenant absorb this? Right. And you're trying to account for that. I think it's so smart because they have to, if your tenants can't afford the rent, it's pointless, right? They have to, who is your tenant base? Who are you attracting? And thinking through that, you said 3-to-1 ratio. Wanted to ensure that you mean like income to rent.
Yes.
Yeah. And then cash management. Speak to cash management a little bit. What does that mean? When you say that, like your property level, what are some things you would be watching as far as cash management?
Yeah. So because I think the next couple of years is really important right now, especially when you're do a renovation project. There's the timing delay between when you're putting the capital and then requesting the draws from the lenders to replenish the reserves, right? So, and in the meantime, you're taking some units down and renovating. So there is some timing delay in those cash. And I think the most important is the first year when you're trying to do is the most disruption to your business. So when you're trying to go through month to month, how much you're renovating, how much you can request a draw process. And also as rising interest rate, because we do have a bridge debt on our deal. So we want to make sure that we're well capitalized in terms of month to month, especially the first year, because you're doing the most renovation, most disruption to the first year in order to see the benefit of it. And once you stabilize. So
yeah,
it's not sexy. It's not the most sexiest thing because you're looking at like accounts, you're going down to the invoices level and you got to make sure you run a tight ship. But I think it's important.
No doubt. Very important that you have a handle on your cash. I think
Yes.
personally as well, right? Not just at the property level, but personally in business. Maggie, what would you say is your biggest challenge in the business right now?
Right now, I think I'm looking at deals. A lot of deals doesn't work out or pencil out well because I don't think the sellers are willing to let go of the pricing that they have seen before. And when we were having a really, very great low interest rate environment, I think some of the sellers are still holding on to that pricing. So I think there's still a gap and differences when I'm looking at deals.
Yeah, no doubt. Challenge that we're all going through right now, right? Is finding those deals, making it work, trying to. Yeah, I just think over the next number of months, sellers are hopefully come back to reality, right? Or get over, us included. There's a couple of deals we wish we'd have sold a year ago, right? No doubt about it. But we got to move on. They're still cash flowing. They're still doing great. To still be just fine. But I know when we're trying to buy deals, it's the same thing right now. So what about, is there a way that you've recently improved your business that we could use as well, or that we could also apply to our business?
Yeah, right now, I think we're looking at more figuring out streamlining asset management side. We don't have a perfect answer yet. I think it's getting a little more challenging when you have a little more properties and when you're starting to work with different property managers and with different systems and trying to assess the data point centrally, like make apples to apple comparison, one property to another. So that's kind of the challenge we're working on. I would love to hear if you have any solution, but that's something that we're working on right now.
Yeah. How we had to improve our asset management. We hired a really good asset manager for one. That was a massive step in improving our asset management. And the next small step we took was bringing property management in-house. So I'm kidding. It was a massive step, to make that happen. What we've learned recently is we built a management company, in-house. We bring all that in-house. But guess what? You still need an asset manager. So, it's two separate things and you need to keep them separate, right? There's some good, conflict there, right? A healthy amount, is good there, between that asset manager and the property management, even especially when you have management in-house. But anyway, yeah, because the asset management is so crucial, right? You got to have a pulse on what's happening day to day at those properties. And you said it too, when we had just a few properties, it wasn't a big deal for my business partner and I to do most of the asset management, right? And he did all of it at that time. But as we scaled, well, all of a sudden that you find yourself just doing that. And now you can't look for more deals. You're underwriting as many deals. You're not focusing on the team as much, right? And you get taken away to do that because it is so important. So we had to scale by hiring people ultimately. But I love that you mentioned creating improving and streamlining a process in Asana. We also use Asana, but we've not really used it for asset management. So I like that you're, building out a process in there. So it's like, hey, we don't forget these steps, right? And then it's pretty easy to continually edit that right as well, right?
Yeah, I love checklists.
Yeah.
I live in checklists every day.
Maggie, what's your best source for meeting new investors right now?
For me, I still like to do a little bit old school meeting in conferences and we're thinking of evaluating and going forward next year, doing more investor meetups locally. And during COVID, we did a lot of webinars. And so that's how do we scale our investor list. But going forward next year, we're planning on some more bigger initiatives. So going out to more conferences or creating meetups on our own. So that's what we're working on.
What's your best tip for passive investors?
Passive investors, I think the only thing I can really, if you're passive, you really don't have control of the deal. If you crave control, you need to get into more active if you like that kind of aspect. But if as a passive, I think I will have to say that just diversify. But the key of growing your wealth is part of that, or mitigating risk is diversify to different sponsors, different markets, different type, or even class A, class B, and class C. I would probably stay away from class D properties. So having these diversification and mitigate your risk. So that's, as a passive, you can grow your wealth from there. That's the key from money generation and then the other investors like Warren Buffett. So that's it.
What are the most important metrics that you track? It could be personally, professionally, deals underwritten, how many mornings a week I get out of bed on time. It could be from one spectrum to the other, anything that you track.
Yes. So I track for deal. I have a couple of things. So for deal, I track, because I'm a deal hunter. So I track how many deals I looked at a day, and I calculate the ratio of when we're going to put an offer, how many we put an offer, how many times we go to the best and final. Our first year, we underwritten 150 deals before we got first deal.
Yeah, so, I believe it.
So now, things are getting easier. We don't have to look at every single deal under the sun in order to, make an offer. It's a lot more easier. So that's one aspect that I track. The other side, of course, I track from asset management piece with my partners, like our deals are projecting or meeting our projections, or is the PM is meeting projections. We give a PM different target than our internal target. So we want to try to see if they can exceed our own projection. That would be great, right? So that's the second thing I track. What else do I do? For passive investing, I also have passive investment as well. So I track those performance, but you don't get insight a lot. So you kind of have to glean from the month to month reports. I just track the distribution if they're making the distribution. If not, I track how their NOIs are doing. But that's kind of like just fun things for me. It's fun for me because I just like to see how other people operate. So
yeah, that's awesome. What about your daily habits that you're disciplined about that have helped you achieve success, or habits that have produced the highest return for you?
I'm completely 100% believe in daily habits because that's how I was able to kind of continue doing 150 deals, underwritten 150 deals, and still think about, okay, there is an end result somewhere. So I get up in the morning. I usually look at deals first half of the morning and talk to brokers and evaluate. That's my job. That's basically my job for the business, and evaluate deals. That's my first thing. The second half of the day, I try to keep that for relationship purposes. So whether to meet with other partners, talk to other partners, potentially sit down and deal, or investors. So that's kind of how I divvy up my day.
What's the number one thing that's contributed to your success?
Persistence, determination, never giving up, even though you're an entrepreneur. So it's going to be a fun ride all day. On the same day, you could be in the roller coaster up and down. So I think it's just seeing through and just do the work, and you'll get the results. And believe it.
How do you like to give back?
I love to just share my experience with other people if they're really interested in getting more involved and really want to know what's behind the scene, or even know if this is right for them, because it's not right for everyone. So I love, and that's the beauty of being in the group that I'm in Big Multifamily, because I'm able to contribute back to other people who are just starting their journey, and like you have seen me 3 years ago.
Yeah. That's awesome. Maggie, pleasure to have you on the show. grateful to hear more of your story and actually, catch up from where I met you, 3 years ago, like you mentioned. But I just appreciate you being real too, and your transparency around, even the willingness to get hung up on, by brokers and whoever, right? But to push through and have the persistence, and even, being worried about inflation and thinking about, and walking through how you're thinking about that, and how tenants, can they absorb it? Our jobs coming in, the ratio of income, all these things that I know many are contemplating right now, right? As they're looking at deals, or hopefully they're looking at many deals as well. But even talking through, hey, asset management is something we're working on and improving, because hopefully the listener, if you have projects you're focused, hopefully they have a focus on that as well, right? And monitoring how their deals are performing. Maggie, thank you again. Tell the listeners how they can get in touch with you and learn more about you.
Yeah, you can reach me, Maggie, at sageinvestinggroup.com. We have a website, sageinvestinggroup.com. We're also on LinkedIn and Instagram. Yep.
Thank you for being with us again today. I hope you have liked and subscribed to the show. Please tell your friends about the Real Estate Syndication Show. And I hope that you are learning and growing. Don't forget to go to lifebridgecapital.com, where you can start investing today.